The Severn Valley Railway is one of Britain's premier heritage railways. In fact, for many people, I suspect if asked to choose the best of all, the Severn Valley Railway would be top of their list. The original Severn Valley Railway ran from Hartlebury near Stourport to Shrewsbury via Bewdley, Bridgnorth, Coalport and Buildwas. The line north of Bewdley lost its passenger service in 1963, but preservation action was immediate. The Severn Valley Railway Society was formed in July 1965, and eventually British Railways agreed to an offer of £25,000 for the 5.5 miles of the line between Bridgnorth and Alveley Colliery in February 1966. A new Severn Valley Railway Company was incorporated in May 1967. A light railway order was subsequently granted in May 1970, and that allowed regular services to begin between Bridgnorth and Hampton Load. Following the end of coal trains from the colliery in 1969, the Severn Valley Railway acquired a further 8.5 miles of the line from Hampton Load to Foley Park. Services were extended to Bewdley in May 1974, and then when freight traffic from the British Sugar Factory at Foley Park ended in 1982, the Severn Valley Railway purchased the final section of the line to Kidderminster, with a new station being built on the former goods yard there, in time for services between Kidderminster and Bridgnorth to run throughout, from 30th of July 1984. It's a railway that has had its fair share of challenges though, perhaps none more so than in 2007. On the evening of the 19th of June that year, during violent thunderstorms that struck the area, the railway suffered major damage. Between Bridgnorth and Northwood Holt, numerous landslides occurred. Track by Oldbury Viaduct was washed away, cuttings were filled with debris, and at Highley, the signal and the embankment it used to stand on were also washed away. The final repair bill was put at approximately £3.7 million. But rise again the railway did, to become once more a jewel in the heritage railway crown. It's been a while since I've been to the Severn Valley Railway, so during October 2025, my son Charlie and I visited a couple of times over the weekend of the latest edition of their popular Diesel Galas, this one to celebrate 65 years of the Class 37. During our visit, we met with Gus Dunster, Managing Director, and some of his colleagues. We had a look around, we had a peek behind the scenes, and generally got a sense of what makes this remarkable railway tick. On the day of our visit, we arrive early in order to catch the 9 o'clock from Kidderminster, where immediately there's a treat in store. We meet up with Gus on the platform, receive an appropriate safety briefing, sign our cab passes to say we've understood and will comply, and then we meet Steve Wainwright, Head of Operations at the Severn Valley Railway, who will be our driver for the run to Bewdley. We climb into the cab of 37508. Richard Heap, signalling inspector and second man, will be our second man on this trip. At 9 o'clock precisely, we set off. And soon past the traction maintenance depot and underneath the magnificent signal gantry adjacent to it. We cross the dramatic Falling Sands Viaduct. Steve applies a bit of power, and we are treated to the sound of an English Electric 12 CSVT engine working hard. then into the funereal darkness of Bewdley Tunnel. And then shortly after that, we all too soon arrive at Bewdley. 37688 Great Rocks, now owned by D05 Preservation Limited, is in the platform, waiting to access the single track section back to Kidderminster. As we pull into our platform, we pass a Class 101 diesel multiple unit, a member of the class built by Metro Camel in Birmingham between 1956 and 1959. We say goodbye to Steve and Richard, step down from the cab, and board the train itself. Once aboard, we walk through the carriages until we find Gus, who's seated in an open saloon towards the rear of the train. Following a highly successful railway career, principally in senior operational leadership roles, including 22 years at Virgin Trains, Gus was appointed Managing Director of the Severn Valley Railway in 2023. He immediately launched a survival appeal for £1.5 million. I suggest that was quite a dramatic first move.
We felt it was right to be dramatic, because if you recall, so we did feel that there was an existential threat in 2023, and that if we didn't do something, that we would potentially lose the railway. And the reason for that was because when you think about what was going on in 2022, we came out of COVID restrictions in society at the beginning of that year, and I think we all were led to believe that everything was going to go back to normal.
Yeah.
And of course, it didn't really. Well, for the first couple of months after the ease of those restrictions, it did. But then inflationary pressure started, cost of living started to really go up. There was all of the issues with consumable costs and gas, electricity, and all this type of stuff as well, utilities. And so we set our stall out, like a lot of businesses in 2022, just to go back to normal. And what we did there, of course, was we saw some okay results for the first couple of months of 2022, and then it all started to tail off really badly, really quickly. But there are a lot of fixed costs with operating a railway, so we ate into a lot of our capital reserves that were left, during 2022, just on the basis of thinking that, everything was going to return to normal, and it didn't.
The cost of just the day-to-day operations of the railway as well, that's quite substantial.
Probably of the order, Richard, of about $3 million a year.
$3 million a year.
Yeah. Just to probably slightly more than that if I really boiled it down. So our costs are pretty significant. So we did two things. We launched the appeal, and we also took a really, really hard look at our operating costs. So the appeal was set to run to 1.5 million potentially. It generated in that first year about $750,000, which was great. And we then did look very carefully at our operating costs, and we trimmed our timetable considerably. We trimmed the number of operating days, and really sort of set that based on the actual footfall that we'd seen the previous year, and then sort of set our stall out to try and baseline at that level, and then look to build on it.
As we travel along the railway chatting, I can't help but notice out of the corner of my eye just how lovely this valley and the railway that runs through it is. It almost seems incongruous to have a timetable dedicated to a rather noisy fleet of 1960 diesel locomotives. Gus, however, is entirely unrepentant. It's all part of the income diversification master plan.
Commercial diversification has been key to my sort of personal strategy since I started in this role.
Yeah.
Because it was very clear to me that if you carry on doing the same thing, then there is no future, because the audience for heritage railways, the traditional audience for heritage railways, is diminishing for a number of reasons. Of course, those who founded these railways to preserve the steam era, they're slightly older still as well. So our our original target audience is diminishing. So we've got to broaden our outreach in terms of the public, and we're setting out to do that. I'll give some examples of that. But we've also got to diversify elsewhere as well. So, I've very much made it an objective that we become much more closely aligned with the mainline railway as well, because there are services that we can offer to them. So we're doing a lot with mainline industry partners. But in terms of events like today's, the interesting thing about the railway enthusiast demographic is there is now as great an interest in heritage diesel events as there is in steam events. Yeah. So last year in 2024, we had just a fraction over 10,000 visitors at our steam events last year, and we had just a fraction over 10,000 visitors at our diesel events. So railway enthusiasts in general are still willing to part with their hard-earned disposable income if you get the formula right, and that applies to both sections, if you like, steam and diesel. The really interesting thing with enthusiasts, though, is that the younger generation, by which I mean the current crop of school leavers and university age, they are interested in both. So you get this really interesting diversification now. I'm sure I'll see plenty of people here at this event this weekend who were here 2 weeks ago at our main steam gala. So you've got the dyed-in-the-wool steam enthusiasts and you've got the dyed-in-the-wool diesel enthusiasts, but the really good news, I think, for Heritage Railways generally is the younger generation are interested in railways, and I think that is where we need to focus.
The other thing one notices out of the window is the challenging terrain. It's easy to see how the events of 2007 came about. And weather-related incidents remain a constant threat, so much so that in early 2025, they struck again.
That must have been a pretty grim phone call to get.
Well, in this day and age, Richard, of course, you don't necessarily get a phone call; you just get a WhatsApp message with a picture. But yes, I'll take your point. But
even worse.
So yes, I received a WhatsApp message. I think it was about 1:10 on the 29th of January, saying, "Gus, have you seen this?" And of course, I hadn't. And it was that really graphic picture, which we've all now seen, of the track suspended and all the formation down in the river at Moorbrook. And luckily, I was in my office on my own, and so my oh whoops moment was entirely private. And so I thought, well, I'd always had in my mind that this may happen, not at Moorbrook, but an infrastructure failure of some description might happen, because I was around on the railway in 2007, and we've got areas on the railway which have known geographic or sort of geological issues that we manage. So it's always in my mind, and having had experience on the main line and knowing what network rail I have to deal with, and climate change being undoubtedly a factor, it was always on my mind that one day this might happen. But when I looked at it, it's like, okay, well, what we're going to do about this? And so within 15 or 20 minutes, I just thought, right, okay, well, it is what it is. It does mean that clearly that we're not going to be able to run to Bridgnorth for the foreseeable future, but we just need now to talk to the experts and start from there and just see what the prognosis is, and then we'll worry a little bit about how we deal with it. And so we did it in a very, I would like to think, logical way, Richard. So it's like assess the damage, get some professional advice, both internally and from Network Rail and from other specialists in the industry. And then, in parallel with that, obviously look very carefully at our insurance arrangements, and and take it from there. And so that's what we did. And then, when we got the experts in, so we did a sort of pre-tendering exercise once we knew from the insurers that they accepted the claim. So we really got some expert contractors in then, and the contractors that we awarded the job to, CML. They really did just blow us away with their appraisal of the situation and their track record, pardon the expression, in terms of some of the difficult sites they've done for Network Rail. And they said to us, look, when we mobilise, we will get this done in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I was like, goodness me. And at that point in time, I thought, crikey, well, if they mobilise when we hope, then we might just be able to rectify and get a bit of the summer season, because that was heading towards possibly the end of July. I thought, crikey, we might just be open for the school holidays. And that's what happened.
And you did.
And that's what happened.
Bridgnorth was the centre of operations for the Severn Valley Railway from the beginning of preservation, until things logically moved to Kidderminster from the mid-1980s. And at that point, Bridgnorth became a destination. And what a destination it is. The town itself is lovely, with its famous high town and low town connected by a wonderful cliff railway. But the station is a gem in its own right. One of the iconic features of it is the pub, which despite the railway closing in 1963 and trains not starting again till 1970, remained open throughout. The railway operations at Bridgnorth are as busy today as they've ever been. And so our first item of business once arriving there is to meet Duncan Ballard, Head of Steam Engineering for the Severn Valley Railway. Duncan is going to take us on a tour of the wonderful steam shed complex. We follow him along the clearly marked designated walkway and into the sheds themselves. First stop, the boiler shop.
This feels purpose-built. When was this shop actually built?
It is purpose-built, and it was definitely, probably at the time, the first one of its type built. That was in the late 1980s, 88 to 89 it was built and completed. Overhead craneage in there, which at that stage was definitely unheard of.
Yeah.
So we used to rely on old steam cranes to move stuff. So it totally transformed all the boiler repairs that we were doing in the late 80s, and obviously then subsequently it has evolved, from the 90s onwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a massive game changer for this organisation.
What can you do here? Pretty much everything, or
We have, to a point, we still do everything. We have done everything. We've built new boilers here. Everything we've currently got in our boiler shop is external commercial work.
Is that right? Wow,
Yes, it is. And we're proud of the work we do, and we offer the same service we do internally for external customers. So this is an Isle of Man boiler. This is number 16 Manannan. It is technically a rebuild, of which the original top crown sheet, which you'll see above the weld line, is original. The dome is original. And I think after that you'll be struggling to find anything else original on it.
Fair enough.
It's got a brand new copper firebox inside it, which again, not many locos in the UK have had them made again in preservation. It was the wish of the customer to retain as much of the original fabric, with it being a unique locomotive. So we've followed their request.
Brilliant.
So now this is a P-class boiler. Bluebell is the locomotive from the Bluebell Railway. So basically, the old wrapper, which is behind, where Dave is there now, is behind there, is all life expired. So we are now basically making a new back end for the locomotive, which is a new outer wrapper, steel door plate wrapper, throat plate. There's a new inner firebox, which actually is an original British Railways one, it's never been used, which will be re-put in it. But basically, we'll have a whole new back end in it, and we will just reuse the boiler barrel. And those are becoming standard repairs now. So yeah, and they'll, I think the aim is to have that completed, hopefully some point middle of next year, hopefully.
Brilliant.
From the boiler shop, we move to the machine shop, where Duncan explains how they've managed to acquire quite the collection of machinery from all over the West Midlands.
That is extraordinary. What is that for?
We quite often use it for like the valve or sort of cylinder liners, where obviously they'll go up there and the machine will run up and down it.
Yeah.
We'll use it for brake cylinders. It's generally the bigger items where we'll put them on the table, and there's a need then to obviously just machine down them. That's for 82045.
82045, yeah.
Totally brand new crosshead and piston, and all that has got to be made to fit the locomotive.
Wow.
And again, we've struggled to find external customers to do it for us, so we're doing all that in-house again for them. It's a hydrostatic lubricator for Great Western Steam locomotive, and some steam pipes which go in the smoke box, which come off the regulator. And I think all these items are for 4150, I think.
Wow.
Top of my head.
We then pop in and have a look at the paint shop, where an LMS coach has just been varnished to such a standard that it's like looking at liquid glass. Then into the main shed. It's an Aladdin's cave in here, sure to delight every die-hard enthusiast. I'm especially interested in 82045, a brand new locomotive that will fill in one of the missing gaps in preservation. No BR standard class 82,000 made it into preservation, sadly, but 82045 will make for a fine addition to the fleet here when complete.
Size-wise, that is absolutely ideal. It'll be quite a special achievement when that is completed.
And roughly how long do you think?
I suppose that's not really my answer, because some of that is in the hands of the trust who are doing it. We were contracted to do the boiler, and there's elements obviously they're asking for our input and our expertise in, but in many ways we can encourage them and try and sort of push them along a bit, but it isn't entirely in our hands. But
No, sure.
I'd like it done within a few years, for various reasons really, and I think as an organisation we would like to see it done in a reasonable period of time. As Dave said, that whole boiler was built here, next door. We built that ourselves.
Superb.
Again, resident locomotive here. This is classified because it had such a heavy overhaul 8-9 years ago.
Right.
This is basically an intermediate overhaul, and
Is this Tor Valley?
It is Tor Valley, yes.
Yeah.
It's currently in its black, from which it ran in wartime black towards its last ticket.
So this is a manor, isn't it?
It is, yes. So that's actually on our wheel drop.
Right.
But we've not dropped, well, you've seen the bogies out of it, so we've dropped the bogie out, but it's not on here for attention for that.
Right.
We've took the bogie out so we can get to the brake cylinder. So the brake cylinder's out being repaired at the moment, but it's the far safest and easiest way to do that type of repair.
Right.
So we take the bogie out to access the brake cylinder.
Got it.
This is the next loco, which hopefully will be out of our works, I would imagine, early in the new year, in 2026. This is the last, that's the base, but the last Barry restoration, we call it, which has come out of the scrapyard in Barry, Dye Wooden scrapyard. And it's been on the line since early mid-1970s.
Right.
It's been largely a volunteer-led project,
Right.
which it came up here a few years ago for acceleration, I think, is the word.
So that's not steam since
1964 or
Wow,
5 it
okay.
was. I think it was a 7-tunnel, I think, at the end. It was at Exeter a number of years, but
Right.
7-tunnel junction at the end, which is why it went to the scrapyard. Hagley Hall's our flagship locomotive. I think I'm okay to say that's still on, yeah, absolutely. It was restored a number of, about three years ago now, with various engineering challenges with it. New replacement cylinders being one on it, but obviously we've done all that work on it, and it's one of the mainstays of the fleet now, isn't it, really?
There is something wonderful about simply watching the industry and skill of craftsmen at work. And we do indeed spend a few moments simply watching as various work continues, as it has done for countless years. But before long, it is time to leave, and we make our way back out to the station. We wait carefully as Class 37 number 37263 runs light back into Bridgnorth Station. Back out onto the platform, and Gus is keen to show me something he's especially proud of. It's a conversion that's been carried out on a GWR buffet car number 9581. That means it's now fully accessible for customers who are mobility impaired.
So if you look at that end, if you like, it is absolutely a Great Western.
Yeah.
And then you get into this, which obviously is an area for wheelchair users and families, and with enough room obviously to manoeuvre. But if you look at the way it's been designed and all the woodwork, it's just
immaculate.
Absolutely true to the Great Western
Even
practice.
to all
of this, the picture frames, everything. The way it's been redesigned. But in keeping with Great Western coach building
and
principles.
a door that's to the correct width.
A door that's the correct width. Yeah, absolutely. If you come through here, then you've got accessible toilet. Again, doors also the same width. Everything really. Nothing is not, in terms of authenticity, what you wouldn't expect to see really.
Absolutely perfect.
And everything done by hand, of course. And then if you come down to this end, and then exactly the same with the
And all of
area
this
as well.
will
And
take
all this,
with all the correct turning circles.
and with the lower couch at this end and everything. Hello. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, everybody wants to see this coach at the moment, so quite rightly so as well.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Oh, good. Yeah, good. This is when my comment about technology will come back to haunt me now, where it doesn't work.
Thank you.
Right, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everything they do at the Severn Valley Railway is carried out to a superb standard. Do it once and do it right is evidenced in everything we've seen.
In the best coach on the railway, I think, at this moment in time.
Indeed, LMS Break Third Corridor Coach number 26921 is the next to be converted to be fully accessible. Can't wait to see that in service as well. The entire railway here is a hive of activity with projects underway all over the place. It's really impressive stuff. But I am reminded of a previous general manager of the Severn Valley Railway who once sounded a stark word of warning for the entire heritage railway movement.
The previous incumbent of your role, I think it was called general manager at the time, was the outspoken, quite colourful character Michael Draper. He was often heard to say there are too many heritage railways. Right, we're building up a massive problem. We're spreading the jam too thin. Whatever you want to do, we need fewer, not more.
Yeah.
And since he said that, if anything, we've ended up with more.
Yeah.
And he predicted a sort of financial crisis, really. Did he have a point?
I think he had a very good point, Richard. So I remember my first meeting with Michael Draper not long after I started as a volunteer here in 1992, and with some trepidation I climbed the stairs at Bewdley up to his office at his invitation, and he was a larger than life character. But there are many things he did actually that I still build on. He wanted a very high profile for the SVR, and I think he created that.
Yeah.
And I've made it my business at the moment to create a very high profile for the SVR, because I think for the very reason that you've just posed in your question, we need to stand out. If we're to survive, we need to stand out. The sector is very congested, and I do fear for the future, because we've all got to work hard to appeal to a different audience now, and there is only so much heritage railway that the country can stand, I think. I talked earlier on in this discussion about the costs. The costs of running a heritage railway are significant. The cost of restoring steam locomotives and maintaining and operating them is enormous, and the rolling stock and the infrastructure and. So I think if we're going to be really honest, did it proliferate too much in the 80s and 90s? I think yes, it probably did. There are hundreds and hundreds of unrestored or partially restored vehicles around the country, some of which will never be restored, I would say. And there are many steam locomotives in particular around that have run but no longer do, and in some cases probably may never steam again. Now that doesn't mean to say they're wasted, because all these things can be used and interpreted in different ways.
Sure.
However, I suppose the nutshell answer to your question from Michael Draper's famous statement is, I tend to agree with him. I think we need to be honest about that the collection is going to have to contract a little bit.
Arley is one of the intermediate stations on the line. It's just north of Bewdley. If the Severn Valley Railway has one station that ticks the box of quintessential GWR chocolate box rural station image, then it is Arley. Original signs, a lovely booking office, magnificently restored, garages and workshops from which emanate the sounds of light engineering and maintenance of various bits of machinery. It all adds up to the period feel and authentic look. A rather fortuitously located bridge allows for a bit of cheeky train spotting and some lovely overhead shots. D6948, formerly 37248, and now owned by 4 individuals who are active working members of the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Railway, arrives with a southbound service, and it looks magnificent. This locomotive arrived on the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Railway in 2010, and it's undergone extensive refurbishment. She certainly sounds magnificent as she departs for Kidderminster. The Severn Valley Railway was built as a single line. That always limited its capacity and ensured it remained something of a tertiary route. Yet most stations had a passing loop, like Arley, and that permits the Severn Valley Railway today to run quite an extensive service. Maximum number of trains is 7. Back at Kidderminster, the station is as busy as ever, with 37250, now owned by Vince Minto and preserved on the Wensleydale Railway, running round its train. We pop over to have a look at the signal box that controls Kidderminster Station, and which was newly constructed in 1987. Paul Marshall is head of signal engineering for the railway, and he's on duty today in Kidderminster Box.
Yes, the Great Western 5-bar vertical tampet frame of approximately 1950-ish. Right. So it's not Great Western, it's Great Western design, but it's a British Rail Western region build. Right. So we had some levers and some of these quadrants from Acton West, and some of the bits came from Stanford signal box, which closed in the 1960s. Right. And we had a raiding party back in the day.
It's unusual to see one that's literally every lever's in use. You know, I often see lots of white ones, but there's
one naughty one. 44 is actually a spare lever.
Right.
But it was designed. It was designed supposed to be the signal into White Elephant sidings.
Right.
Which was going to be the loco yard, which was supposed to be going to be built in the car park. It never happened.
The bracketed signals are from Maradia in South Wales, and they have been newly installed. They provide a real presence at the end of the station. I have a quick look at Kidderminster Station itself. It's not at all original, having been built in 1984, with extensions later, although it wasn't until 1994 that the Severn Valley Railway were able to acquire the freehold of the land on which it sits. It does look wonderfully authentic though, having been built in the style of the former GWR station at Ross-on-Wye. One of the locomotives that's been a popular attraction at the Severn Valley Railway for the past 7 years is Class 40, number 4106 Atlantic Conveyor, now owned by the Class 40 Preservation Society. At the time of our visit, the locomotive was soon to be returning to the East Lancashire Railway in Bury, and so Gus arranged for me to have a quick look. Although I'm very proud to be the honorary president of the Class 40 Preservation Society, Gus, ever the professional, has called Clive Elverston, the chairman of the society, to ask if it's okay I have a look around and, treat of all treats, start her up. Clive kindly said it would be okay. Thanks, Clive. And I can't wait.
So we're starting here at number one end of the loco.
Yeah.
So radiator end. So we'll check the coolant level as we go past that.
Yeah.
4106 was one of 20 Class 40s to be built at the Robert Stevenson and Hawthorne factory in Darlington, which allowed production capacity at the Vulcan foundry to build the 22 production Deltics.
Progress down the side of the engine. On this side of the engine, we've got the lube ball dipstick, so we look in there to see where we are.
Look at that, it's an actual dipstick.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Gus shows me around the locomotive, and I confess, I am giddy with excitement.
on a Class 40, these are manually topped up. So you would top that up by just removing that screw there and putting some oil in. One of the dangers with diesel locos with roof-mounted exhaust ports is that rainwater can collect in the turbos through the exhaust ports. And if it collects to too much of a level, it will find its way back into the engine.
Right.
And of course, then when you start the engine, you get hydraulic lock because you've got water in the cylinders. So one of the ways to stop that from happening is to do what has been done on this loco and quite a number of the others on the SVR, is to put a drain plug in the bottom point of the turbo and leave that in the open position. So any rainwater that collects in there will just basically drip straight through and onto the engine room floor.
Right.
And you're not talking about large quantities. We put in the main lighting breaker, which is here. And we also put the battery switch in, which is here. So I don't know if you want to have a quick look at this. If I just open that cupboard door. So here we have a good old-fashioned, now this really is a Frankenstein item, but a nice knife switch, which we put in, and that connects the batteries to the start circuit effectively. You heard that bell go in. when we get to the other end, we'll put the master controller from off to engine only, and that will then, now we've connected to the batteries, the lube ball priming pump will run on the engine, and we'll let that run for a couple of minutes, and then we should be in a position to press the start button then. I'll put the key in there. So when we go to engine only, actually leave that door open for a second, Richard, because you should hear now, you hear that pump start running? So that's the engine lube ball priming pump. So we'll let that run now for a couple of minutes because it's doing what it says on the tin. It's basically priming the oil all around the engine. But yeah, if you want to do the honours, then...
Am I allowed to sit in here?
Yeah, by all means, yeah, help yourself, yeah.
I pretend I'm...
Pretend you're going to...
top link.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Right, here we go.
That's it.
I've never done this before.
Have you not?
No, not on a 40, no.
Brilliant,
So
right,
this
okay.
is a
Laser
great
relay.
moment. Here we go.
Put your finger on it. Oh, it should be okay now.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be okay, yeah.
Oh, the sound. I am transported back to my childhood. I genuinely could have sat there for much, much longer, but it was soon time to continue the tour. 4106 was parked near to the traction maintenance depot at Kidderminster, and so it's there we go next. Gus is a self-confessed Class 50 fanatic. As a result, the traction maintenance depot at Kidderminster has more than a whiff of the Western region about it. Old Oak Common was the legendary depot just outside London Paddington. The shed building numbers come from the former Bristol Bath Road depot. Close your eyes and we could be back at any point between the mid-1970s and 80s on the BR Western region. I chat to Gus about what the depot enables the team to do on the Severn Valley Railway.
So this was built over the winter period, really, 2015, 2016, and formally opened at our May Diesel event in 2016, so just coming up for 10 years old now, nearly.
And what can you do in here? I mean, it looks like it's well equipped. We've obviously got pits here, but behind us we've also got 35-ton jacks. Can you do pretty much everything?
Yeah, pretty much everything. The only things we can't really do that we need to do occasionally is lift Class 50 engines. They weigh 33 tonnes. Class 08 engines are about 15 tonnes. And the reason for that is that our overhead crane here is a 10-tonne maximum lift. But that was a deliberate decision when we did the design, that to have something bigger in craneage terms was actually going to be unaffordable, really, in terms of the extra cost for the steel work for the building, for the load bearing side of it. And whilst we have got a relatively large number of 08s and Class 50s, we don't do engine lifts on them very frequently.
Right.
So since the depot has been built, I think, for illustration, we've done one Class 50 lift and one Class 08 lift. So when we do that, we get a substantial road crane in outside to do that.
But it feels incredibly professional. I mean, it's just nice to be able to do something out of the weather.
Yeah.
You know, in a purpose-built facility with all the gear. Do you actually sell space on this as well, or is it just for your own internal use?
Well, we started off with it just for our own use, but from about 3 years ago, we have now started to see that, which is really good. So in a week's time, if you were standing here, you'd have 2 HST power cars behind you from Rail Adventure coming in for their routine maintenance. And that's just one of a number of examples of external contract work that we've done. We're very careful to balance that to make sure we don't compromise the maintenance of our own fleet.
Yeah.
But it is possible to do that, and we are now actively doing it.
And we can't help but notice Warship 821, the loco that kind of started it all, really.
Well, it is. So by pure coincidence, here it is today, 821. This loco was bought by some visionary individuals back in 1973, and they really started off, the mainline diesel preservation movement in the UK, and it's part of the SVR fleet, belongs to the Diesel Traction Group, and it's quite appropriate, really, that it's in here today. And you did mention something else a minute ago when you talked about being able to work in this environment. Of course, safety is uppermost, really, in all our minds, and this is heavy engineering. These locos have got heavy components. If you jack a loco, you've probably got 100 tonnes on the jacks, something like that. So, the days of coming up with Heath Robinson methods to do these sorts of things, which is how preservation used to work, that's no longer sensible or safe or proper. So our volunteers expect us to provide a safe working environment, which we have, and the productivity has gone up enormously since then, and we've gained more volunteers as well. So it has been a virtuous circle, Richard. We were working out in all weathers before, and projects used to take months, if not years, which we can now do in weeks, and we can do it 52 weeks a year. So yeah, well worth the investment.
Yeah, fantastic facility.
Yeah.
Whilst the majority of what is here, and indeed elsewhere on the railway, looks to the past with great fondness, there's a fair amount of forward-thinking innovation on display as well. Jack Baldwin is a volunteer whose day job is to work for West Midlands Trains, and he's been working on a project that is most definitely forward-looking.
So Jack, this was obviously once an 08 shunter, or possibly still is, I'm not sure, but it's certainly one with a difference, isn't it? Tell me a little bit about what you've done here.
Yeah, so essentially we've taken the original English electric diesel engine and generator out of it and popped in a raft which consists of a large traction battery, hydrogen fuel cell, hydrogen tanks, and a lot of converters and inverters that supply the electricity. So essentially, from the point of where the generator would receive or send the electricity into the motors, it's all the exact same. So instead of a generator, we've got a big DC-DC converter that sends voltage from the battery down to the motors and controls them the exact same as it always has been. So it is essentially a plug-and-play control system to replace the original diesel engine.
And in terms of a hydrogen fuel cell itself, I mean, I've sort of seen fair amounts of commentary that they're great, but in terms of end-to-end efficiency, the losses are quite significant because of the hydrogen itself. Are you using this as a test bed to see if you can actually improve on that, or what's the objective with it?
So essentially, with this loco, it's actually primarily a battery shunter, with the hydrogen used as a range extender for the battery. So the hydrogen doesn't directly power the traction motors. Because it's a shunting loco, it's great for the fact that it can do stop-start movements, and in those times when it's stopped, it can be charging itself up off the hydrogen. So although the fuel cell doesn't produce a massive amount of current at one rate, because it's constantly stopping and starting, whenever it's stopped, it can be charging. So it actually, as a shunting loco, it's a much better concept for a hydrogen-powered loco than something that's maybe doing long distances.
And am I right that you've been doing this in conjunction with a university?
Yeah, so it's a company called Vanguard who are affiliated with the Birmingham University. Myself, I'm a technician for West Midlands Railway, so that's my day job. I do that on the side.
And how long before we are going to be able to see this actually out operating as a shunter?
So we've had it tested in the end of January this year. We have had it up and running. Since then, we have stripped it all apart and basically started again with a few bits. Being a prototype, there's always things you find along the way. So we've ripped it apart, sorted any faults we've had with it, and hopefully in the next month or so, it should be leaving the shed ready for dynamic testing over the winter.
Chatting to Jack makes me realise that young volunteers like him are the future for railways such as this. Gus clearly agrees.
Well, I'm by nature a positive person,
Yeah.
Richard. I always tend to look, optimistically on things. And I think, despite what I said to you earlier about there being some challenges for the sector, as long as we are open-minded about those challenges and we apply ourselves to them, then I think there is a future. The risk I see is the very, very traditional supporters of heritage railways not being live to those risks and making it difficult for us to evolve and remain relevant. Because to me, this is all about your railway remaining relevant to society.
Yeah.
If it is no longer relevant, well, there is only one outcome, I'm afraid. So the challenge for us is to become as relevant for the next generation as we have been to previous generations. But I think the ingredients are there for that to happen, because I said to you previously, I'm really encouraged to see the numbers of young people who are interested in heritage railways. We've got a great crop of young volunteers on this railway, and we're seeing a good number of young people visiting the railway as well. So to boil that down to a micro example, I almost think now that our railway should be marketed by the generation of 20-somethings because they know how to communicate with that generation. I think we both know how to communicate with people of our generation, but they're not the future really.
No.
So we have got to, really, really apply ourselves to making ourselves as relevant as possible.
We head back to the station after our visit to the traction maintenance depot. Our visit overall is drawing to a close. There will be some that no doubt would prefer to see a line such as the Severn Valley Railway preserved in a time capsule, with green Great Western Railway steam locomotives with their brass adornments, pulling chocolate and cream coaches to Bridgnorth and back. But this is 2025. It is increasingly challenging to run any form of tourism business these days, and heritage railways are no different. They have to diversify, they have to innovate, and they have to be bold. Assembling 10 Class 37s for a Diesel Gala and watching one of them haul a rake of Gresley teak coaches is not authentic for this line, and it is bold. But I thought it was all brilliant. And it has also meant 4,000 people buying tickets over 4 days in October, with all the upselling opportunities that brings, not least for things like food and beverage. I suspect the pubs at Bridgnorth, Bewdley and Kidderminster all did especially well. Everywhere you look, this railway is innovating, from the fully accessible GWR buffet to the hydrogen fuel cell shunter and the themed galas and trains. Many of these sell out really quickly, actually, and rightly so. I quite fancy the festive spice train myself, though I will give the scream train a miss. For Gus Dunster, this railway has been a love affair over many years, but there is nothing whimsical about the operation here. It's professional through and through. The attention to detail, extraordinary. The willingness to think outside the box, refreshing. Where on earth Gus found the time, along with James Dobson of Avanti West Coast, to organise perhaps the biggest success of Railway 200 year, the greatest gathering at Derby Litchurch Lane with Alstom, I will never know. Impressive indeed. And what is also impressive is that Gus's positivity about the future has not only remained undiminished, if anything, it's grown, despite all the challenges the Severn Valley Railway and the heritage movement are having to face. I can thoroughly recommend the Severn Valley Railway. I know we really enjoyed our visit on the Diesel Gala. It deserves its place at the top table of Britain's heritage railways. May it continue to delight railway enthusiasts of all ages for many years to come.